Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and today I'm playing with the lovely What's Cooking stamp set. This is a great one for males or females, anyone who loves cooking, and not that the weather would tell you that at the moment in the UK, but this one, as soon as I saw the bowl, it reminded me of our kettle barbecue. So here we go. Here's our kettle barbecue in a fun barbecue themed card. Great for the men in our lives or the women in our lives who are kings and queens of the barbecue. My husband certainly takes over the barbecue in our house. And I thought this fun paper here, a lot of the designs kind of reminded me a bit of kind of blankets sort of for the garden. So I'll just show you how. Just used half a sheet of our lovely Colour Family Designer Series paper, the stacks that come in the 6x6, and I thought I'd use Crushed Curry as a bit of a change to brighten it up a bit. So that's what I'm going to do today. So let's get stamping. So the first thing we're going to do is actually stamp and die cut some of our different shapes and our boards. So to create our board here, we've got this lovely die that comes in the coordinating dies with What's Cooking, and it has beautiful texture in here. And to make the most of that, I didn't do it on this one, but I did on another card that I made. What I'm actually going to do is kind of dip the die onto the ink pad first. So just pop it, literally it'll just pick up a bit of the ink, come in couple of times just to ink it up as you would a stamp, you know, the equivalent of tap tap tap. Obviously I've got nice inky fingers as a result. Pop it down and try not to move it. So I'm just popping a bit of tape over the back there, because once it's inked, obviously it will then if it moves it'll smudge it. Not that it would matter because it's a wood grain effect, but I just think it's better if we don't. Grab your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, which is what I'm using here, and again just using a standard plate, so 1 and 2 2s, pop that through. And when you take that out, you'll see the ink has transferred into the groove, so you get that lovely wood effect on your card, not on your stamp at all. I've then done some more die cutting as well. So I've cut out a spatula, and this is just using, I think it was called galvanized metal, but it's just some slightly sort of foil, a spatula, and then I've die cut 3 of those spatulas as well, in just ordinary smoky slate cardstock. So once you've die cut those, I have all those to hand, we're then going to do a bit more stamping. So you want to stamp your knife. Now the knife I've just stamped in Memento onto a scrap of basic white. Like so. And again, just pop the die over that. And I use just a bit of post-it note tape just to hold that in place. I do find with little dies, well, in fact with all dies, it just, when you're die cutting a stamped image, it just helps to kind of keep that in place. And I find the post-it note tape seems to kind of be the best stuff I've come across. My plate's starting to get a bit bowed, so I'm going to have to flip those in a moment. And then the last thing we're going to be doing, so there we have our knife, is we're going to stamp twice onto some smoky slate cardstock, the hole. Now it already has the sort of shading on it, so literally just stamp like so, and you can see it's already got that, let's say, you don't need to do any extra colouring on that at all. The stamp does all the hard work for you. And then again, just pop that through our die cutting machine. here we go, and here's 2 that I've got. So next thing we're going to do is actually just glue those together just on that narrow edge. So I'm using a little bit of my fine tip glue, and I'm just going to pop that to one side. To set. Like so. There we go. And then onto our, we'll do our colouring of our knife while we're here. So with the knife itself, all I'm doing is I'm just grabbing a bit of my smoky slate ink. She says, yeah. Okay. And I'm just adding it to one of my clear blocks. And I'm just going to use one of our blender pens to just add a bit of colour to that, where the blade would be. And then I'm going to come in with my Wink of Stella, and because obviously, well, not obviously, because you get all sorts of blades these days, don't you? And I've seen some really funky looking blades, but this one is going to be a traditional metal blade. So I'm just colouring that in with Wink of Stella over the top of that bits of smoky slate, as you can see there. You could colour the handle a bit more if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then while that's just drying off slightly, I'm going to stamp and colour some of our little vegetables. And all I'm using here is I'm going to use a bit of Poppy Parade for my tomato, and a bit of crumb cake, just a light crumb cake, for my mushroom. And because they're small images, it doesn't matter too much what colours you're going to use. My celery, just a little bit, and so you can add a bit more once that first one has dried. Then just come in with just a bit of green on the bullet top, and a little bit more Poppy Parade. Just add a bit of depth of colour around the outside. Okay. So, where are we at? Next thing I'm going to do is create a card base. So for this one, I've just done a standard tent fold. So this is 14.5 by 21 centimetres, scored in half at 10.5. So that's 5 3/4 by 8 1/4, scored at 4 1/8. I've got a piece of card then, because I've chosen, I'm going to use some crushed curry. And this is actually slightly bigger. This is for slightly bigger than normal. It's just to make a really narrow border. So this is 14.3 by 10.3. So it's a really narrow border to the card. So that's just going to go right on the front there. Literally just have like a millimetre all the way around. Just a really narrow border. And then this one is 14 by 10 centimetres. And I'm not doing anything with that one until I have cut this piece of DSP in half diagonally. So I'm just coming down literally point to point on my trimmer. And to get that sort of blanket, all I'm going to do is come in a little bit more down the edge there. And you can really choose to kind of put it wherever you fancy. So I've kind of come, you can see, slightly down the corner there. Then all we need to do is just trim off those excess pieces. And I just kind of thought it reminded me of sort of a picnic blanket. And then we can get on with our creating our creating our fun barbecue. So I'm going to come in and add some glue onto the spatula heads first of all. And I'm going to pop those kind of with the whole length really of the spatula sort of showing. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So again, fine tip glue, or you could use a sponge dauber or a piece of sponge to add the glue. Again, so just sort of have a look at that from the front. So we've got 2 legs, and then that middle one is obviously just going to be shorter. So again, all I'm doing is just popping that in the middle there. And there we have our kind of tripod for our barbecue. So that's going to go on the side there. So all I need to do is pop that up on some dimensionals. I'll be using some pieces, just some offcuts for the narrow pieces. I've misplaced my sheets of 3D adhesive foam, but all I'm doing is, you can see I'm popping those dimensionals in part over the spatulas because that helps keep them in place, like so. And then I'm going to cut some strips just from the side. There. Just on the bottom section. So it's just the trimming bit, and it goes onto that sort of thicker bit at the bottom of those, just to kind of support them. That one I've just gone a little bit long, so I'm just going to snip that off. Now, before we do any more, I'm going to stamp some more of my detail with my sort of mushrooms and things. So now that paper's in place, I can just stamp those. Like so. And then again, colour those in as much or as little as you like. I just thought it was a bit of fun to sort of, it's like creating your own DSP really. Just adds a little bit to it. Again, don't have to colour those mushrooms in. But you know what mushrooms are like? Well, I don't like mushrooms. One of the few foods I don't eat, but it's just kind of got that. Perhaps these are more chestnut mushrooms as well. Okay, so now that's in place, let's pop our barbecue in place as well. Take those dimensional strips off the back there. So there's my barbecue. I'm going to add my chopping board, and while I brush it out I might as well use up the scraps of this as well. I'm just adding that, as you can see, so you can still see a few of those shapes peeking out. And then there's some more here that I have to admit I have fussy cut. Now, if you don't do fussy cutting, that's fine. You don't, obviously it's not compulsory. But I do think that these were, sort of perfect for a barbecue. I don't know about you, but well, we grow our own tomatoes and our own cucumbers, so for me, it isn't a barbecue unless it's got some of those on it. And guess who does all the slicing? Yeah, that'll be me. Husband, he insists on cooking the meat, sitting there, beer in hand, you know, and I'm rushing around the kitchen doing the rest. So there's our chopping board. There's me busy preparing all my extra bits of tomato and mushroom. Here's my fun flipper, spatula, whatever you call it. So I used just some, I think this was an old one, galvanised, but there is a new one in the autumn and winter catalogue that has the 3 colours of silver foil in it, and that they're kind of textured, and one of those, the middle coloured one of those would be great. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Let's clear the decks. So all that's left to do now is to actually do our sentiment. So what I want for that is I'm going to get just a couple of scraps of my basic white card. I literally just out of my scraps pile. So having got those, I'm then going to stamp my sentiment, which rather than happiness is handmade, I'm going to actually do, should I do what? No, let's do that. What should I do? Well, I've got what's cooking in front of me, so let's do that. So I'm just going to stamp that twice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the what's first. Like so. And I'm actually going to add that onto my card that my DSP that I used. This is just to show that you see nothing goes to waste. Leave that just for a second to dry. And then my cooking, again, this is just a bit of fussy cutting, so I'm just going to cut that out. So as you can see, this isn't, you know, this is why it's fussy. One of my fellow Stampin' Up! Demonstrators calls this fuzzy cutting, and you know what? It's probably a better description because it's fuzzy. It's not precise. And all you do is just come round, and obviously this is why I do it in 2, because you're going to come a bit closer to that what when you cut out the cooking, like so. And again, just add a little bit of glue onto the back of that. So this is just, as I say, it's just I've got a fine tip dispenser so that you can pop a bit of my Tombow into there. So now that first one is dry, I'm just going to come around that and it wasn't as dry as I thought. Downside of using Tombow. And my cooking, there we go. So again, I'm going to kind of fussy cut around that outside edge. So it's just following those kind of lines. Like so. And I'm going to pop those up on a couple of dimensionals. Teeny ones. And then all that's left is for me to add that to my layer, which I really should have done before I started adding any dimension. You know, I tell you, don't do as I do, do as I say. This is what always happens, of course, when I'm same in class. You know, I take it as an opportunity to go, oh, right, actually, what you should have done. Because invariably I spot it just as I've done it, so hopefully it's usually before my ladies have started doing their next bit. So just take those backing pieces off and add my cookin to there. So because I've got a bit of dimension, I'm just going to angle that slightly, nice and gentle, around that outer edge. And that can then go on the front of your card. And if you open up your card, as I've done just there, first, then you know it's in the right orientation. So there we have our fun barbecue themed card, ready for the barbecue cook in your life. What do you think? I hope you've had fun. Come back and see me again soon. And don't forget, if you'd like to purchase the What's Cooking and accompanying dies, then just pop along to my blog at flutterbyheidi.co.uk, or follow the links just below the description bar in on YouTube, or the pictures on my blog post. Thanks for watching. Bye now.